Well, I'm back. uh, Today I want to talk about my dad. Uh, Gil Hamilton was one of the most complicated and perfect people I've ever known. Um, my dad, he meant the world to me. Drove me crazy, uh, was a drinker, lifelong drinker, binge drinker, couldn't hold a job when he drank. Um, Used to be a backup singer for uh, Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers. My dad was one of the teenagers, kind of part-time sometimes, full-time sometimes. At I think at 16, he had his own apartment, but that his grandmother had given him because his family life was so dysfunctional. She just thought it was better to get him an apartment and let him live on his own. And then she suddenly died, and he had to move to the States from Montreal. Complicated, but fantastic. Not perfect, but fantastic. I realized that my father, he was a trailblazer because he looked like me. Born in 1943, really of two mixed race parents who at the time at least blended, but they had a son that didn't. His mom, my grandmother, had light colored hair. She would dye it black because society couldn't deal with seeing a child that looked like my father with a woman that didn't look like she should be his mother. I was blonde as a child. That happened to me. Someone came up wanting to help me find my mom as I stood right next to my mom. Think about that. This is the society that he had to grow up in, where everyone knew that you were either from the right side of a track or the wrong side of the track. And interestingly, now that I'm grown and can look at the sides of those tracks, it seems like all the people on one side of the track are minorities and all the people on the other side of the tracks are primarily not minorities, but I digress. My father was amazing. I wanted to make my 30th podcast about him, and it just shook me to my core because he died in 2017. Right after he died, my husband was diagnosed with sepsis and almost died. I spent the next year and a half caring for him and rehabilitating him. Literally 48 hours after I'd returned home from my father's memorial service. So my entire 2018 and 2019 were helping him get back on his feet. And then I lost a job in October of 2019. And I thought, oh, I'll just, David said, take some months off, get some rest, which I did. When I got ready to start a job, COVID started. Or find a job, COVID started. You know what? My life has been hectic since my father died. It took me over a year to find a new job. I've now been on that job for 4 years. This October will be my 5th year at a fantastic company. But it was hard. And you know what? I always had my father to be a level-headed voice in my life. And that voice is gone. And this year, for the first time, I actually slowed down enough to make my life about me. Because I realize that's all I've ever done is make my life about other people. Right? Some people have welcomed that. Some people have taken advantage of that. That's fine. I'm good with that. But my father was always a level-headed voice I could turn to. And it makes me angry that I don't have that voice to turn to. It makes me sad that I don't have that voice to turn to. My father was complicated, but he was level-headed. People wrote him off because of his drinking and his inability to keep a job. But there was nothing broken about my father. He was just different. If he'd have lived in New York, no one would have thought anything about his day drinking. Nobody. But we moved to Statesville, and we get judged differently in places like Statesville. Can you tell I'm angry? I'm angry because I miss my father. I miss that level-headedness. But you know what I realized? I realized that my father is better off not being in this world. My father was a complicated, complex, and very diversely different person than everyone around him. He was about my complexion with hazel green eyes and long straight hair. We thought we were Native American just because that's how he kind of looked. Turned out not so much. This is just a perfect mix of human DNA. Some white, some black, some in between, and this is what you get. Because at the end of the day, we are all human. All of us. That's it. Human. We draw these lines, right? I had a conversation with my neighbor yesterday who has mixed race children. And I thought to myself, let me warn him about the perils of growing up a mixed race child in a world where black people hate white people and white people hate black people. And then we don't say it out loud. We pretend like it's, oh, no. Well, those people are just bad from the wrong sides of the track. So we stand over here on the right side of the tracks and we keep everything away from them. Well, those are humans. I'm looking for a house right now. I'm reminded of how we divide lines and say, well, you shouldn't live there. Why? Because those humans are a little less desirable than those humans? I am so sick of that. I realize that my father's voice is what I miss. His level-headedness is what I miss. The fact that he experienced what I'm experiencing and he understands the path I walk. I miss my father. I miss him terribly. But you know what God did for me this week? God reminded me that in moments where I feel my weakest, he is my father. I've started looking for houses. I've had to give some consideration to all the advice that everybody's giving me about, well, don't go in that neighborhood, or that's the wrong side, or, ooh, not there. Those people might hurt you. Those are humans. We forget that, don't we? That when we talk about those people, they are human. We, especially we Christians, who want to say that there are unwashed masses. Jesus never saw an unwashed mass anywhere except when he looked at people of power. Those are people who need to be washed because they forget that they're here to serve the people, not rule over the people. I serve my community every day. Nobody who knows me can tell you otherwise. I serve strangers like I serve friends. Because that's what Jesus taught me to do. This podcast is going to tick my mom off. Because I am angry. And she says, no one wants to listen to anger. But you know what? I think we should start saying some things in anger. I think that as I look for a house, I'm going to look for a house in a neighborhood where my father's like, these are decent people. Look around. They're working everyday people. They have hardships, yes. That's the level-headed voice I was looking for. There's nothing wrong with these neighborhoods that people are telling me are wrong. They're just undesirable to people who are closed-minded. I am not closed-minded. My father raised me to have an open mind because my father raised me to have an open heart. That is the voice that I forgot. That is the voice that this week when I started looking for a house in Durham, and when I talk about Durham, I'm talking about all of Durham. All of Durham is open to me because I don't fear where I live. I walk this life with a risen Savior who will watch over me. So when my day comes, whatever day that is, I am ready. And as I look for a house, I look for a house now, not just with my mother's voice in my ear, but my father's spirit in my heart. And I'm ready. I'm ready because I've missed his voice because I mourned his loss, but he didn't go anywhere. He didn't go anywhere. I know that my risen Savior sits right there next to his Father in heaven, and I know in my heart that my Father will be there when I get there. That's a comfort to me. So as I go to live this life, there's a new me now because I can hear my Father's voice. And my Father always told me to be a leader, to not be a follower, and to know who I am. And now I do know who I am. The world better watch out. Go in peace.